They said she was ordinary. They said she was forgettable. When billionaire Marcus Blackwell threw his wife out of their penthouse on a stormy Wednesday, the tabloids barely noticed. He had a fashion icon on his arm and the world at his feet. Elena was just gone. But 5 years later, at the most exclusive charity ball in London, the doors opened and the room fell silent. Elena wasn't just back. She was transformed, and she wasn't alone. Holding her hand was a child who looked exactly like the man who destroyed her. This is a shocking true story of the forgotten wife's ultimate revenge. You won't believe who the father really is. The rain on Piccadilly didn't just fall. It felt like it was trying to wash the city clean of its sins. For Elena Morrison Blackwell, standing outside the gilded entrance of the Dorchester Hotel, the rain was the only thing touching her that felt real. Inside the penthouse suite, the air was still thick with the scent of expensive cologne and betrayal. 10 minutes ago, her life had ended, or at least a life she had built for 7 years. Marcus Blackwell, the man she had supported when he was coding software in a cramped flat in Manchester, the man whose presentation she had helped prepare before his first investor meetings, had looked at her with eyes as cold as polished marble and delivered the final blow. "It's about image, Elena," Marcus had said, adjusting his cufflinks. He didn't even look at her. He was looking at his reflection in the floor-to-ceiling windows that overlook Hyde Park. Blackwell Systems is going public next quarter. The board, the investors, they expect a certain aesthetic. You're comfortable. You're safe. But you aren't. He trailed off, waving a hand vaguely in her direction. "I'm not what, Marcus?" Elena had asked, her voice trembling. She was wearing a gray cardigan and jeans, her hair in a messy ponytail. She had spent the day preparing his surprise birthday dinner. The cake was still sitting on the counter, untouched. "You aren't a power player," Marcus snapped, finally turned to face her. "Look at you. You're a teacher from Yorkshire. You don't fit in this world. And frankly, I've outgrown you. Isabella understands this world. She navigates it. Isabella." The name hung in the air like toxic smoke. Isabella Fontaine, the daughter of a French luxury conglomerate owner. Tall, elegant, with hair like spun silk and a laugh that sounded like crystal chimes. She was everything Elena wasn't: aristocratic, polished, ruthless. "She's 24, Marcus," Elena whispered. "We've been married for 7 years. I worked 2 jobs so you could develop the prototype for the Blackwell platform. And you were compensated," Marcus said, walking to the mahogany desk and picking up a thick manila folder. He tossed it onto the coffee table. It landed with a heavy thud. "The prenup is ironclad. You know that, but I'm being generous. There's a check in there for £1.5 million. Take it, sign the NDA, and leave." Elena looked at the folder. £1.5 million. It was a fortune to most, but compared to the billions Marcus was about to be worth, it was hush money. It was go-away money. "I don't want your money," she said, tears finally spilling over. "Don't be dramatic," Marcus sighed, checking his Patek Philippe. "Isabella is meeting me for drinks at Claridge's in 20 minutes. I need you gone before I get back. The movers will pack your things tomorrow and ship them wherever you go. Yorkshire, I assume." He walked past her, the smell of his sandalwood cologne, a scent she used to bury her face in, now making her nauseous. He stopped at the door, hand on the handle. "Elena," he said, not looking back, "do yourself a favor. Don't try to fight this. You'll only embarrass yourself. You were a good starter wife. But the game has changed." The door clicked shut. Elena stood in the silence of the massive apartment. The luxury she had never really asked for now felt like a prison cell. She walked over to the coffee table and opened the folder. The divorce papers were already drafted. The check was clipped to the front. £1.5 million. She felt a cramp in her stomach, a sharp, twisting pain. Instinctively, her hand went to her abdomen. She hadn't told him. She had planned to tell him tonight, over the surprise dinner. The little plastic stick with the 2 pink lines was currently wrapped in tissue paper inside her coat pocket. She was 8 weeks pregnant. She looked at the papers. If she told him now, everything would change. Marcus was obsessed with legacy. He wanted an heir. If he knew she was carrying his child, he wouldn't let her leave, but he wouldn't love her either. He would resent her. He would trap her in this marriage. Or worse, he would take the baby and push her out later. And Isabella would be the stepmother. The thought made Elena's blood run cold. Isabella, who had been photographed by paparazzi kicking a homeless person's dog in Chelsea. Isabella, who treated service staff like furniture. Elena looked around the room one last time. She saw the wedding photo on the mantelpiece. Marcus looking young and hopeful, Elena looking adoring. Marcus had turned the frame face down. She took the pen. She signed the papers with a shaking hand. She took the check. "A starter wife," she whispered to the empty room. She grabbed her coat, the one with the positive pregnancy test in the pocket, and walked out. She didn't take any clothes. She didn't take her jewelry. She took the lift down to the lobby, walked past the doorman who refused to make eye contact with her, and stepped out into the rain. She hailed a black cab, her hair plastered to her face. "Where to, love?" the driver asked. Elena looked back at the towering building where her husband was likely already toasting to his freedom. "Heathrow Airport," she said, her voice finding a sudden steel-like strength. "One way." She wasn't going to Yorkshire. She wasn't going to be the sad, discarded ex-wife crying in a suburb. Marcus Blackwell thought he had thrown away a piece of glass. He had no idea he had just discarded a diamond. And he certainly didn't know he had just abandoned his heir. 5 years later, the hills of Provence were bathed in the golden light of late afternoon. In a sprawling lavender estate just outside of Avignon, a woman walked with rows of purple blooms, inspecting the harvest. She wore a wide-brimmed hat and a simple white linen dress. But the way she carried herself was regal. This was not the hunched, fearful Elena of London. This was Elena Beaumont. She had reclaimed her grandmother's maiden name. It sounded stronger. It sounded like a woman who didn't need permission. "Maman, maman." A boy came sprinting down the dirt path, dust kicking up around his little leather sandals. He was 4 years old, with a mop of unruly dark curls and eyes that were startling, piercing green. Marcus's eyes. Elena, now Elena, crouched down and caught the boy in her arms, swinging him around. "Olivier, mon petit trésor," she laughed, kissing his cheek. "What is the rush?" "Grand-père says the shipment is ready." Olivier shouted, his English perfect but tinged with a slight French lilt. And I helped. I counted the boxes. There are 42. Elena smiled, brushing the hair from his forehead. Olivier was brilliant, too brilliant for his age. He had started reading at 2. By 3, he was doing multiplication. He had his father's intellect, that terrifyingly sharp mind that saw patterns where others saw chaos. But Elena made sure he had her heart. "Good job, Olivier," she said. In the last 5 years, Elena hadn't just survived. She had evolved. With the £1.5 million, she hadn't bought a house in the suburbs. She had invested. She had flown to France, a place Marcus had always deemed too traditional for business. She found a failing lavender estate with incredible land but terrible management. She bought it. Then, using the knowledge she had gleaned from years of listening to Marcus's business calls, details he thought she was too simple to understand, she restructured the business. But she didn't stop there. She remembered Marcus complaining about the supply chain of rare earth minerals for his tech processors. She knew which operations were undervalued. She quietly invested the profits from the estate into a lithium operation in Chile and a rare earth refinery in Kazakhstan. She did it all through shell companies, EB Ventures. Now, 5 years later, EB Ventures was a quiet giant in the global market, and nobody connected the reclusive CEO, Elena Beaumont, to the discarded wife of Marcus Blackwell. As she walked back to the villa with Olivier, her phone buzzed. It was her assistant, Philippe. "Madam," Philippe said, his voice tense, "you have received an invitation. I think you need to see it." "I received many invitations. Philippe, decline it. You know I don't do social events." This one was hand-delivered by courier from London. "It is for the Windsor Charity Ball." Elena stopped walking. The Windsor Ball. It was the Super Bowl of British high society. The ticket price alone was 40,000 pounds. Why on earth would they invite me? She asked. They didn't invite Elena Beaumont, the lavender grower. Philippe said. They invited the CEO of EB Ventures. They want your sponsorship, but there's a note attached. It seems the ball is being hosted this year by Blackwell Systems. Elena felt the blood rush in her ears. Marcus. She hadn't seen him in 5 years. She had blocked his name from her news feeds. She knew vaguely that he had married Isabella 6 months after their divorce. She knew Blackwell Systems had gone public and made him a multi-billionaire. Read the note, Philippe. Philippe hesitated. It says, To the distinguished head of EB Ventures, we would be honored to have your presence as we unveil the future of technology. Signed Marcus Blackwell and Isabella Blackwell, co-chairs. Elena looked down at Olivier. He was chasing a butterfly, laughing, completely unaware that his father was the man who signed that note. For 5 years, she had hidden. She had protected Olivier from the toxicity of the Blackwell lifestyle. She had protected herself. But lately, things had been happening. Rumors in the financial pages. Blackwell Systems was stalling. Their innovation had dried up. They were desperate for a partnership with a raw material supplier to launch their new quantum processor. They needed EB Ventures. Marcus needed her. He just didn't know it was her. A slow, dangerous smile spread across Elena's face. It wasn't a smile of joy. It was a smile of a predator who just realized the cage door was open. Philippe, she said into the phone. Yes, madam. Accept the invitation. Madam, are you sure? It is in London. The press. Accept it, Elena commanded, and call the atelier in Paris. Tell them I need a gown, not something simple. I want something that screams war. And for the boy? Philippe asked gently. Elena looked at Olivier. He was a spitting image of Marcus, but with a kindness Marcus never possessed. The world didn't know Marcus had a son. Marcus didn't know he had a son. It was time. Get him a tuxedo, Elena said softly. Custom fit. He's coming with me. Madam, if you bring him, everyone will know. Exactly, Elena said, watching the sun dip below the Provence hills. Marcus threw me out because I wasn't a power player. He wanted a trophy. Well, I'm going to show him exactly what he lost. And I'm going to show him what he can never, ever have back. She hung up the phone. Olivier, she called out. The boy ran back to her. Oui, maman. How would you like to go on a trip to a big city called London? Olivier's eyes widened. Is that where Papa is? Elena froze. She had never lied to Olivier, but she had been vague. She told him his father was a very busy man who lived far away. Yes, Elena said, kneeling down and looking him in the eye. That is where he is. Will I meet him? Olivier asked, hope shining in his innocent eyes. Elena smoothed his collar. You will see him, Olivier, but more importantly, he will see us. The stage was set. The starter wife was dead. The matriarch was coming home. While Elena was breathing the fresh air of Provence, the air inside the Blackwell Systems headquarters in the city of London was recycled, stale, and thick with panic. Marcus Blackwell stood at the head of a massive glass conference table on the 60th floor. The view was spectacular. The tower bridge looked like a toy from this height. But Marcus wasn't looking at the view. He was staring at a graph on the screen that was trending sharply downward. Explain this to me again, Graham, Marcus growled, pinching the bridge of his nose. And explain it like I'm a 5-year-old, because apparently that's the level of competence I'm dealing with. Graham Hayes, the CFO of Blackwell Systems and a man who had survived 3 heart attacks, wiped sweat from his bald head. It's a supply chain, Marcus. We have the designs for the quantum processor. The tech is revolutionary. But without the high-grade lithium-6 and the specific rare earth alloy for the processor stabilizers, we can't manufacture them at scale. The operations in Congo are tied up in legal battles. The Chinese markets are closed to us. So find another supplier. Marcus slammed his hand on the table. I am Marcus Blackwell. I don't beg for batteries. We have found one, Graham said, his voice trembling slightly. The only supplier with enough stockpile to save the Q4 launch is a European conglomerate called EB Ventures. They cornered the market on these specific alloys 3 years ago. It's almost like they knew the shortage was coming. EB Ventures? Marcus muttered. I've never heard of them. Who's the CEO? That's the thing, Graham said, shuffling his papers. Nobody knows. They operate out of France. Very private, very exclusive. They don't take meetings. But what? But the CEO accepted our invitation to the Windsor Ball tonight, Graham said, a glimmer of hope in his eyes. This is our chance, Marcus. You have to charm them. If we don't close a deal with EB Ventures within the week, the quantum processor launch fails. If the launch fails, the stock tanks. If the stock tanks, you lose a majority share. Marcus felt a cold sweat prickle down his back. Losing control of his company was his nightmare. It was the only thing he loved. Fine. Arthur straightened his tie. I'll charm them. I'll offer them whatever they want. Money, equity, a seat on the board. Make sure the table at the ball is set for VIPs. He dismissed the board and walked back to his private office. He needed a drink. He poured a glass of whiskey, aged 25 years, costing more than most people's cars, and checked his phone. 5 missed calls from Isabella. He groaned. He texted her back. In a meeting, see you at home. He drained the glass and looked at the photo on his desk. It was him and Isabella on their yacht in Monaco. They looked perfect, beautiful, rich, but the reality was rot. Isabella wasn't a partner. She was a pet, and an expensive one. In the last year alone, she had spent £3 million on consulting fees for a perfume line that never launched. She constantly leaked stories to the press to keep her name relevant. And worst of all, she was boring. Marcus found himself missing the nights he used to spend with Elena. Elena who would make him cheese toasties at 2 a.m. while he coded. Elena who would listen to him rant about algorithms and actually ask insightful questions. Elena who never asked for diamonds, only for his time. Stop it, he whispered to himself. She was a teacher. She was small. You are a titan. He left the office and took his private helicopter to the Cotswolds estate to pick up Isabella for the ball. When he arrived, the house was in chaos. Stylists were running around with garment bags. A makeup artist was on the verge of tears. No, 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 Isabella screamed, throwing a diamond earring across the room. It hit a mirror, cracking it. I said the rubies, you idiot. The sapphires clashed with my eyes. Isabella Fontaine Blackwell stood in the center of the room wrapped in a silk robe. She was undeniably beautiful, but her face was twisted in a mask of rage. Isabella, Marcus said, his voice dangerously low. We have to leave in 30 minutes. Look at this. Isabella shrieked, pointing at her stylist. She's trying to sabotage me. The press is going to be there. Marcus, British Vogue is covering it. I have to look perfect. You look fine, Marcus said dismissively. Listen to me. Tonight is not about your dress. It's about business. The CEO of EB Ventures will be there. I need you to be charming. I need you to be intelligent. Can you manage that? Isabella scoffed, walking over to him and adjusting his lapel. EB Ventures sounds boring. Can't you just buy them? I'm trying, Isabella. That's the point. If I don't, we're in trouble. Isabella laughed cruelly. You mean you are in trouble? My trust fund is doing just fine, darling. Marcus stared at her. At that moment, he realized he didn't just dislike his wife. He hated her. Marcus's breath hitched. The boy had his nose. He had his chin. He had the exact same way of tilting his head when he looked at something interesting. It was like looking in a time mirror. Isabella, noticing the silence, looked up from her phone. Her jaw dropped. Who is that bit? She started. But the word died in her throat. Elena stopped 3 feet from the table. The entire room was watching. A waiter, sensing the tension, froze with a tray of champagne. Elena looked at Marcus. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She offered a small, cool smile that didn't reach her eyes. Hello, Marcus, she said. Her voice was lower than he remembered. husky and rich with a French accent she had adopted over the years. "I believe you've been trying to reach my office." Marcus stood up, his legs knocking into his chair. "Elena, you are—" "I am Elena Beaumont," she corrected him smoothly, "CEO of EB Ventures." The room gasped. The collective intake of breath sucked the oxygen out of the great hall. "You," Marcus stammered, "you own the lithium supply." "I own the lithium. I own the rare earths. I own the future of your company, Marcus," she said, her voice carrying clearly through the silent room. She looked down at Olivier, who was staring at Marcus. "And," Elena continued, her hand tightening protectively on the boy's shoulder, "I also own the one thing you can never buy." Marcus looked at the boy. "Who? Who is this?" Elena smiled, and it was the sharpest thing in the room. "Olivier, say hello to Mr. Blackwell." Elena said calmly. "Hello, Mr. Blackwell." Olivier said, his voice polite and clear, "Are you the man who makes the computers?" Marcus looked into the boy's eyes. His eyes. He did the math. 5 years. The boy was 4. His knees went weak. "Elena," Marcus whispered, ignoring Isabella, who was now clawing at his arm. "Is he?" "We're late for the first course," Elena interrupted, cutting him off. She pulled out a chair for Olivier, then sat down herself, directly opposite Marcus. She smoothed her napkin over her lap. "Shall we discuss business, Mr. Blackwell?" she asked, picking up a glass of water. "Or are you going to keep staring at me like I'm a ghost?" "I thought you were in Yorkshire," Marcus managed to say, sitting back down slowly. "I have homes in many places," Elena said. She glanced at Isabella, who was trembling with rage and confusion. "Hello, Isabella. Lovely dress. Gold is so predictable, don't you think?" Isabella turned purple. "Who do you think you are? You can't just waltz in here with some child and ruin my night." "I didn't come to ruin your night, Isabella," Elena said, taking a sip of water. "I came to save your husband's company. Although, looking at the financials, it might be a mercy killing." The people at the nearby tables were leaning in so far, they were practically falling into their soup. This was better than any West End show. The discarded wife had returned as the kingmaker, and she had brought the heir. Marcus couldn't take his eyes off Olivier. The boy was buttering a bread roll with intense concentration. It was exactly how Marcus buttered his bread, methodical, precise. "We need to talk," Marcus said, his voice urgent. "Privately." "We are talking," Elena replied coolly. "We have nothing to discuss privately. Anything you have to say, you can say in front of your board members. And your wife." "The boy," Marcus hissed. "The boy is mine," Elena said, her voice turning to steel. "He is a Beaumont." "He looks like a Blackwell," Isabella spat out, the realization finally hitting her. She looked from Marcus to Olivier and back. "Oh my God! You were pregnant. You left pregnant." "I was thrown out," Elena corrected. "There's a difference." She turned back to Marcus. "Now about the lithium. 6. The price has gone up, Marcus. Considerably." "How much?" Marcus asked, dazed. Elena leaned forward. The candlelight danced on the blue diamonds around her neck. "Everything," she whispered. "I want a seat on the board. I want veto power on all new product launches. And I want a public apology." "For what?" Marcus asked. "For underestimating me." The band struck up a waltz, but nobody moved to the dance floor. The real dance was happening at table 1, and Elena was leading. She had played the long game. She had suffered in silence. And now she held the cards, the chips, and the house. Marcus looked at his empire, then at his wife Isabella, and then at his son, Olivier. He realized, with a sickening thud in his chest, that he was about to lose everything he thought he controlled. And the terrifying part of him realized something else. He wanted to know the boy. "I accept," Marcus said. "Marcus," Isabella shrieked. "You can't be serious." "I accept the negotiation terms," Marcus said, ignoring his wife. "But I have a condition." Elena raised an eyebrow. "You are hardly in a position to make demands, Marcus." "I want to get to know him," Marcus said, pointing a shaking finger at Olivier. Elena laughed. It was a dark, rich sound. He, she said, is not for sale. The morning after the Windsor Ball, the headlines were not about the quantum processor or the stock market. They were about the woman in black and the boy with the green eyes. "The return of the Queen," read the Telegraph. "Who is the heir?" asked the Times. Marcus Blackwell sat in his office, the blinds drawn against the harsh morning sun. On his desk sat a legal summons. He hadn't slept. The image of the boy, Olivier, was burned into his retinas. "We have options, Marcus," said Julian Fontaine, his attorney, and unfortunately, Isabella's uncle. Julian was a pit bull in a suit, known for destroying anyone who tried to touch the Blackwell fortune. She abandoned the marriage. She had a child. This is parental alienation. We can sue for full custody. We can paint her as unstable. Marcus rubbed his temples. "She didn't abandon the marriage, Julian. I threw her out, and if we go to court, that will come out." "It doesn't matter." Julian waved a hand dismissively. "You're Marcus Blackwell. She's nobody, a lavender farmer. We can bury her in legal fees until she hands over the boy." "She's not a nobody." Marcus snapped. "She's a supplier. If I sue her, she cuts the supply chain. The company dies." "Then we played dirty," Julian said, his eyes narrowing. "We prove the boy isn't yours. We demand a DNA test. If it's negative, she's a fraud. If it's positive, we have rights." "Do it," Marcus said. "Get the test. Today." 2 hours later, a convoy of black Range Rovers pulled up to the penthouse Elena was renting at the Savoy. Elena was eating breakfast with Olivier when the doorbell rang. She didn't flinch. She knew they were coming. She had Philippe take Olivier into the bedroom to watch cartoons. She opened the door to find Marcus, Julian, and a court-appointed nurse. "Good morning, Marcus," Elena said, leaning against the doorframe, still wearing her silk pajamas. "You look tired." "We're here for a DNA sample," Julian barked, holding up a court order. "We need to verify the paternity of the minor child." Elena laughed softly. She stepped aside. "Come in. I expected this yesterday. Honestly, you're slipping, Marcus." She led them into the living room. The nurse set up her equipment. Elena called for Olivier. When the boy walked out holding a stuffed bear, Marcus felt that same punch in the gut. The boy looked at Marcus with suspicion. "It's okay, mon chéri," Elena soothed him. "This lady just needs to touch your cheek with a cotton swab. It won't hurt." Olivier climbed onto Elena's lap. The nurse did the swab quickly. Then she swabbed Marcus. "Results in 24 hours, the nurse said, packing up. "Now that that's done," Julian said, stepping forward, "my client demands visitation rights immediately." "Denied," Elena said coolly, pouring herself a cup of coffee. "You can't deny him," Julian blustered. "He is the father." "The test results aren't back yet," Elena reminded him. "Legally, he is a stranger. And once the results are back, you'll find that Marcus signed away his rights to any future claims on my assets in our divorce settlement. Or did you forget the clause you added to protect his stock options? Any and all future acquisitions, biological or material, are the sole property of the individual party." Julian turned pale. He remembered the clause. He had written it to ensure Elena couldn't claim any new patents Marcus developed. He never thought it would apply to a child. "That won't hold up in family court," Julian argued weakly. "Maybe not." Elena smiled over her coffee cup. "But while we fight it out in court for 3 years, EB Ventures will suspend all shipments of lithium. 6 to Blackwell Systems. How long can the company survive without processors, Marcus? A month? 2. Marcus stared at her. She was holding a gun to his head, and she wasn't even blinking. "What do you want, Elena?" Marcus asked, his voice defeated. "I told you last night," she said. "I want the board seat. I want the apology. And I want you to leave us alone." "I can't," Marcus admitted, looking at the bedroom door where Olivier had disappeared. "He's my son. I have a legacy to leave." "You have a legacy," Elena said, her voice dropping to a whisper. "But you don't have a family. You chose Isabella. Live with it." Marcus looked at the closed bedroom door one last time, then turned and walked out. Julian followed, scrambling to keep up. Elena watched them go. Her hand shook slightly as she set down the coffee cup. It was a bluff. She would never use Olivier as a bargaining chip to hurt the company permanently. It was Olivier's inheritance, too, after all. But Marcus didn't know that. Fear was her greatest weapon. The DNA test came back. 99.99% match. There was no denying it. Olivier was a Blackwell. The news leaked instantly. The stock of Blackwell Systems jumped 15% on the rumor that an heir had been found, stabilizing the company. The board of directors was ecstatic. They pressured Marcus to bring Elena into the fold immediately. But the Blackwell stayed in the Cotswolds. Isabella Fontaine was unraveling. She paced her dressing room, kicking piles of clothes. "He's going to leave me," she screamed into her phone. "Papa, you have to do something." On the other end of the line was her father, Laurent Fontaine, the luxury conglomerate magnate. "Calm down, Isabella. Marcus can't leave you. The prenup we signed would cost him half the company." "He doesn't care about the money anymore," Isabella cried. "He's obsessed with the brat. He has a photo of the kid on his lock screen. He's setting up a nursery in the penthouse. He hasn't looked at me in 3 days." "Then we need to damage the woman," Laurent said coldly. "If she looks unfit, Marcus gets a kid and the woman goes away. If Marcus gets the kid, you become the mother. You raise the heir. You control the legacy." Isabella stopped pacing. A slow, wicked smile formed on her lips. "I become the mother." "Exactly. But first, we need to destroy Elena Beaumont." 2 days later, the smear campaign began. It started on social media. Bots began flooding Twitter and Instagram with stories about Elena. Source: Elena Beaumont had a secret affair with a French politician. Source: Elena Morrison stole money from Blackwell Systems before she left. Source: Is Olivier really Marcus's, or is this a long con? Then came the paid interview. Isabella sat down with a tabloid TV show, looking tearful and fragile. "I just feel so betrayed," Isabella told the host, wiping away a fake tear. "Marcus and I have been trying to have a family for years. And this woman, she hid his child. She kept a father from his son just to spite us. It's cruel. And now she's using that poor boy to blackmail the company. She's demanding millions. It's extortion." The public opinion began to sway. People loved the victim, and Isabella was playing the part perfectly. Marcus watched the interview from his office, his face turning red. He knew it was a lie. Elena hadn't asked for money. She had more money than he did now. He called Isabella. "What the hell are you doing?" "I'm defending our family, Marcus," Isabella snapped. "Someone has to." "You're making things worse." "She controls the supply chain." "Not for long," Isabella said. "Papa's calling in favors. We're going to block her shipments at the ports. We'll starve her out." Marcus slammed the phone down. He felt like he was losing control of everything. But Elena didn't get mad. She got even. She watched the interview from her hotel suite. Philippe was pacing nervously. "Madam, they are blocking our containers in Southampton. The Fontaine shipping lines are refusing to dock our ships." "Let them," Elena said calmly. She was typing on her laptop. Isabella made one mistake. She assumed I was playing by the rules of 2020. But I'm playing by the rules of war. "What are you doing?" "I'm releasing the audit." During her years building EB Ventures, Elena had learned that information was more valuable than gold. When she decided to return to London, she had hired private investigators to look into everyone, Marcus, the board, and especially Isabella. What she found was nuclear. Isabella hadn't just been spending money on clothes. She had a gambling problem, a massive one. She was millions of pounds in debt to underground casinos in Monaco. But that wasn't the crime. The crime was how she was paying it off. Isabella had been stealing prototype designs from Marcus's home office and selling them to a rival tech firm in South Korea. Elena pressed send. She sent the dossier to 3 people: the head of the Financial Conduct Authority, the board of directors of Blackwell Systems, and Marcus Blackwell. Marcus's phone pinged. He opened the email. Subject: the leak. He started reading. His eyes widened. He clicked on the attachments. There were photos of Isabella meeting with executives from their biggest competitor. There were bank transfer receipts. Isabella wasn't just annoying. She was a corporate spy. Marcus felt a strange sensation. It wasn't anger. It was relief. This was his out. He stood up and walked out his office, straight into the boardroom where the emergency meeting was being held regarding the block shipments. "Gentlemen," Marcus announced, throwing the dossier onto the table, "the shipments will clear tomorrow, and I am filing for divorce." "On what grounds?" a board member asked. "The prenup?" "There is no prenup for treason," Marcus said coldly. "Isabella Fontaine has been selling our IP. She is the reason our stock dipped last year. She is the leak." The room erupted in chaos. Marcus walked to the window. He looked out at the city. He had been blind. He had chased a shiny golden object and thrown away the real treasure. He took out his phone and dialed a number he hadn't dialed in 5 years. "Hello?" Elena's voice answered. "You win," Marcus said. "Isabella is gone. I'm pressing charges. The path is clear." "The path to what?" Elena asked. "To us. To being a family." There was a long silence on the other end. "Marcus," Elena said, her voice sounding tired but firm, "you still don't get it. There is no us. I exposed Isabella to save my son's inheritance, not to save your marriage. I don't want you back." "Then what do you want?" Marcus pleaded. "I can change. I can be the father he needs." "Prove it," Elena said. "Not with money, not with lawyers. Show me you are a father, not a CEO." "How?" "Olivier has a recital at his preschool tomorrow at 10 a.m. It's the Very Hungry Caterpillar. He's playing the caterpillar." Marcus blinked. "A recital? I have a meeting with the Japanese investors." "Then don't come," Elena said. "But if you miss this, Marcus, don't ever ask to see him again." The line went dead. Marcus looked at his calendar. 10 a.m., Strategic Alliance meeting. Mandatory. He looked at the empty chair where Isabella used to sit complaining about the rubies. He looked at the dossier of betrayal. He pressed the intercom button. "Margaret." "Yes, Mr. Blackwell?" "Cancel the Japanese investors." "Sir, that deal is worth £2 billion. "Cancel it," Marcus said, his voice shaking but resolute. "I have a prior engagement. I have to go see a caterpillar." The auditorium of St. Margaret's Preschool in Islington smelled faintly of floor wax and digestive biscuits. It was a far cry from the sandalwood-scented boardroom of Blackwell Systems, and infinitely further from the champagne-soaked air of the Windsor Ball. Marcus Blackwell stood at the back of the room. He was wearing a 4,000-pound suit, but he felt naked. He was sweating. He checked his watch. 10:02 a.m. He was late. He had never been late to a board meeting in his life. Yet here he was breathless, scanning the sea of parents holding iPhones. "Excuse me," he whispered, squeezing past a father holding a toddler. "Sorry." He spotted her in the third row. Elena. She wasn't wearing the black velvet gown of the Avenging Queen today. She wore a soft cream jumper and jeans. She looked happy. Marcus found a spot against the wall just as a curtain, a painted bedsheet, was pulled back. A dozen 4-year-olds shuffled onto the stage. Some were dressed as apples, some as pears. And there, in the center, inside a green sleeping bag that had been modified with pipe cleaners, was Olivier, the Very Hungry Caterpillar. Marcus felt a lump form in his throat the size of a golf ball. Olivier recited his lines, but he was still hungry. The audience laughed and clapped. Olivier beamed. He looked for Elena in the crowd and waved. Then his eyes scanned the back of the room. Marcus held his breath. He stepped out from the shadows of the doorway and raised a hand. Olivier saw him. The boy's face didn't light up with recognition. He didn't know this man well enough for that yet. But he looked surprised. He smiled a shy, tentative thing. For the first time in a decade, Marcus Blackwell didn't think about stock prices. He didn't think about margins. He thought about how small that wave was. After the show, the playground was a chaotic mix of sugar-high children and chatting parents. Elena was helping Olivier out of his costume when Marcus approached. "You came," Elena said, She didn't look up, but her voice wasn't cold. It was neutral. I canceled the Japanese deal, Marcus said. It sounded like a brag, and he immediately regretted it. I mean, I wanted to be here. Olivier looked up at Marcus. Did you see me eat the pickle? Marcus knelt down. He didn't care that the mulch was dirtying his suit trousers. I did, Olivier. You were the best caterpillar I've ever seen. Man says you make computers, Olivier said, poking Marcus's tie. I do, Marcus said, but I think caterpillars are cooler. Elena watched the interaction, her arms crossed, her expression unreadable. Go play with Tommy, Olivier, Elena said gently. I need to talk to your father. Olivier ran off. The word father hung in the air between them, heavy and strange. Don't expect to meddle, Marcus, Elena said, turning to him. You did the bare minimum. I know. Marcus stood up, brushing off his knees. I know I messed up, Elena, with Isabella, with everything. I was blind. You were greedy, Elena corrected him, and you were insecure. You thought you needed a fashion icon on your arm to prove you were a big shot. You didn't realize that power comes from loyalty, not aesthetics. I want to fix it, Marcus said. He reached into his jacket pocket. I spoke to my lawyers this morning. I'm dropping the custody suit. I'm giving you full physical custody. I'll take whatever visitation you allow. And he pulled out a folded document. I'm stepping down as CEO of Blackwell Systems. Elena's eyes widened slightly. This was the twist she hadn't expected. Marcus loved that chair more than life itself. Why? She asked. Because the board is in shambles after the Isabella scandal. Marcus admitted. The stock is tanking again. The investors don't trust me. They think I'm easily manipulated. And they're right. He handed her the paper. I'm recommending you as the interim CEO. You know the supply chain better than anyone. You have the raw materials. You have the business acumen. You built EB Ventures from nothing. Elena took the paper. She looked at it. Then she looked at Marcus. You're giving me your company. It's the only way to save it, Marcus said. And it's the only way to ensure Olivier has something to inherit. I'll stay on as chief technical officer. I'll just code. It's what I was good at before the money ruined me. Elena looked at the man she had once loved. He looked broken, humbled, but for the first time in years, he looked real. She tore the paper in half. Marcus gaped. What are you doing? I don't want your charity, Marcus, Elena said, dropping the pieces into a bin. And I don't want to be CEO of Blackwell Systems. I have my own company. I like my lavender estate. I like my life. But the company will collapse, Marcus said. No, it won't, Elena said. She stepped closer to him, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. Because there's one thing you still don't know. What? 5 years ago, Elena said, when you were starting up, right before the IPO, you had a liquidity crisis. You couldn't make payroll. Remember? Marcus nodded slowly. Yes, an anonymous angel investor came in with £4 million at the last second. Saved us. Elena smiled. That wasn't an angel, Marcus. That was my grandmother's inheritance. I liquidated her estate to save you. I didn't tell you because I didn't want you to feel indebted to your plain wife. Marcus stared at her, his mouth opening and closing. You? You were the investor? I was, Elena said, which means, Marcus, under the terms of that original convertible note, I already own 15% of Blackwell Systems. I've been your partner this whole time. The realization hit Marcus like a freight train. She hadn't just returned to save him now. She had saved him then. She had always been the strong one. He was the one who had been carried. He fell silent. The arrogance that defined him for a decade finally evaporated. So, Elena said, checking her watch, here's the deal. You remain CEO. You clean up the mess with Isabella. You apologize to the public. And every Friday, you fly to France or wherever we are, and you spend the weekend being a dad. No assistants, no phones. Just you and Olivier. And us. Marcus asked, a sliver of hope in his voice. Is there a chance for us? Elena looked at him. She reached out and straightened his tie, a familiar gesture that made Marcus's heart ache. "I love the man who coded in a flat in Manchester," she said softly. "I don't know the man in the 4,000-pound suit. You have to earn the right to be known by me again, Marcus, and it's going to take a long, long time." She turned and whistled. "Olivier, ice cream time." Olivier came running, his face smeared with dirt. He looked at Marcus. "You coming, Mr. Computer Man?" Marcus looked at Elena. She gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. Marcus smiled, a genuine smile that reached his eyes. He loosened his tie. He took off his jacket and tossed it over his shoulder. "Yes," Marcus said, taking his son's small, sticky hand. "I'm coming, and call me Papa." As they walked down the Islington street, the queen of industry, the fallen king and the caterpillar, the paparazzi were waiting at the gate. But for the first time, Marcus didn't pose. He picked up his son to shield him from the flashes and walked behind his wife, happy to finally be in second place. The starter wife had finished the game, and she had won it all. What a journey! From being discarded in the rain to holding the keys to the empire, Elena proved that the best revenge isn't just success, it's owning your worth. Marcus learned the hard way that while you can buy a company, you can't buy loyalty, and you certainly can't buy the love of a child. Elena didn't just take back her dignity. She rewrote the rules of the game, showing that true power is quiet, patient, and unbreakable. It makes you wonder how many people are underestimated just because they stay silent.